Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Unique Items. Today we're going to be going over the Grandfather Sword. Yes, I wanted to show you the Grandfather Sword in all of its beauty. This is what it looks like. It's freaking sexy looking. Like, it's got such a nice graphic. Very, very pretty. Very pretty. I did finally get my Grandfather Sword the other day. After like 23 days of yeah, no super unique November. The Grandfather Sword is absolutely insane. And let's go over it together and we'll talk about him. So first off, where do you get it? Well, it's a uber super unique. Uber super uniques are extremely rare. They pretty much never drop at all within the regular game. I mean, after months, I think there was like a couple, like a handful, had actually been found. The Grandfather actually does have a special chance of dropping from Duriel, though, which is where I got it. So that's why everybody's farming Duriel now, because of Duriel. Of course, Duriel has better options. Now, the Grandfather can only drop, from what I understand, for two classes, which is the Necromancer and the Barbarian. So if you're looking for the Grandfather, I do believe you do actually have to be on a Barbarian or Necromancer to find it, which I think is kind of stupid. I think it should drop for everybody. Being a very powerful unique like this, I think it would be really cool if it just had a chance to drop for any class. But they are the only classes that can actually use it. So the only classes in the game that can use two-handed swords are the Barbarian and the Necromancer, which means that the Barbarian and the Necro are the only ones that get to grace their hands with the Grandfather. This one in particular rolled perfect. In fact, they all roll perfect now. So this is a change that they made back in 1.22, I believe, is they all roll perfect now. And God, the stats on this thing are insane. So because it's a two-handed sword, of course, it has 52.5% critical strike damage. It also has 108 all stats, and to put that in perspective, another two-handed weapon, which has all stats on it, caps out at 84, which means it's quite a bit higher than your standard all stats. It's very nice, which makes it extremely easy to hit those ridiculous target paragon nodes. We also have 84% increased damage, which is kind of insane also. Just a huge damage bump bonus right there. And then an absolutely insane amount of HP, 4,584 HP increase. I mean, I go from 10,163 HP to 14,747 HP just for putting on the sword. It's freaking nuts. It also ignores durability loss, which means that it never breaks. So, I don't know. I don't really know exactly if that's the greatest thing in the world, but no repair bill on it. The rest of your gear is still going to break, but the Grandfather doesn't. This is a throwback to the Grandfather in the previous games that was also indestructible. So you have to understand that it's just kind of like a tradition that the Grandfather is just an indestructible sword, and it will always be an indestructible sword. And throughout the ages, it will continue to serve in that capacity. The flavor text on this is an unbroken lineage of unwavering strength, which it kind of follows in with what I'm saying, because it's literally the same in like basically all the games. The special effect on this is kind of insane. And I'd like to talk about this for a second as well. It says increases your critical strike damage by 100 times, which for some reason or another, there's like a kind of like a misnomer here with how the 100 times works, because it doesn't actually represent what it actually says. So when you see these numbers, by the way, you have to take them for what they are, which is like, for instance, the one that's on Tibalt's is 34 times. So that is 1.34 times. So that's what that actually represents, is 1.34. The Grandfather, on the other hand, because it's a 100%, is actually 2.0. Which is kind of insane. So it's literally a multiplier of 2 which is just going to straight up multiply whatever you've got by a crazy number. Now, it doesn't multiply your crit damage. That's not what it does. So, you know, like a lot of people would say that if you have a, I don't know, let's say I did like a crit for like 50,000 damage, right? So that's just times 2 of my crit, which gives me 100,000. It doesn't actually multiply your damage number. What it actually multiplies is your crit damage percentage right here. So as you can see, you get I have 294.1% crit strike damage at the moment, and when I put Grandfather on, that goes to 845.8%. Now, of course, it also has the 52.5% on it, which you have to take into account, but you can clearly see there that my crit damage is just straight up getting multiplied by an insane amount. Even if we take the 294.1 and we multiply it, or sorry, we add the number, so 294.1, and we take, what is that, 52.5, so plus 52.5, gives us 346, and then we also have the all stats, which, according to our dexterity, that's crit strike chance, so that's not it. So none of these seem to be affecting the crit strike damage, but we do have the crit strike chance there. And then you take this and you put it on, and that 346 gets multiplied by 2, basically, which more is happening than just multiplying it by 2, because as you can see, if I just multiplied it by 2, it would only be 693.2. And I think what's going on is I have other multipliers, like, for instance, things that give me bonuses when I get more strength. There's more going on here than just increasing the critical strike damage by simply 2. The freaking damage that it gives is insane, though. I'm currently playing around with a build at the moment, which is based on Gushing Wounds, because Gushing Wounds scales based on your critical strike damage. So as you can see here, I have a 115 times multiplier on my critical strike damage bonus. And if I take this off, my critical strike damage bonus from Gushing Wounds goes down, obviously, and that also affects the amount that I'm getting from this. So if I were to go and actually fight with this sword, you can see that the Gushing Wounds gives some absolutely crazy numbers. We were testing it the other night, and I was able to get to, I think it was 3.4 million bleed pulses. 3.4 million bleed pulses is kind of crazy. But basically what it involves is just stacking the effect. Let me put that here. And I'm missing my helmet. There's 2.8. We almost made it to 3 that time. It really depends on how many crits we get with this. And of course, every single build is going to be different, because there's lots of builds out there that build off of crit percent chance. And you can see it's even just left over at the end, I'm still getting like 1 million bleed pulses, which is kind of crazy. This particular effect is one that stacks based on your critical strike chance. So the higher my critical strike chance is, the better the percent chance that the bleed will get multiplied. So the bleed gets multiplied by this 115 times multiplier as long as I trigger the effect. Well, I only have, I think it's, what is it, like a 34.5% critical strike chance. So if I get that critical strike chance up, I end up with more procs of the multiplier, which of course is feeding into the Grandfather, and it's just making the bleeds go even higher. I honestly, this character's not even fully set up. I could probably get up to 4 or 5 million. I don't even know. Easily. Nice 2.4 million bleeds there, and then it scales back down, of course. Honestly, the Grandfather is got to be one of the craziest items I've seen in the game because it's just raw damage is what it is. It's so freaking powerful in what it adds to a critical strike build that it's kind of nuts. If you were a barbarian of any type that is using critical strike damage, which I think pretty much all barbarian builds do, if you are any kind of barbarian that utilizes, necromancer that uses critical strike damage, like for instance the Bone Spear Necromancer, Grandfather is probably insane on the Bone Spear Necromancer, like absolutely freaking ridiculous. Because obviously the entire thing with the Bone Spear Necromancer is you stack critical strike damage, and the higher your critical strike damage is, the better your damage goes. And obviously Grandfather is going to multiply your critical strike damage, giving you even higher numbers than you could ever obtain otherwise. But it's kind of insane. I mean, the health that it gives is nuts. It's nearly 5,000 health. The all stats makes it so much easier to get access to all of your Paragon nodes. The bonus damage is definitely very nice too, and the fact that it's a sword means it has the critical strike damage, which is what most people are looking for. And it just, all in all, it's just absolutely insane. We were unsure going into patch 1.20 because of the changes to critical strike damage and how they kind of removed the multipliers and all that stuff, and they kind of capped them a little bit and made it much more difficult to build your critical strike chance. But I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, Grandfather does not disappoint. It still gives you a massive amount of damage just for putting the thing on. Right now, you can see my attack power. My attack power without the Grandfather on and with an appropriate sword in that spot that is actually 925 and fully upgraded is 11,787. Just putting the sword on brings that attack power up to nearly 20,000. The sword itself gives almost like 8,000 attack power, which is which is more than most people show on their character screen, like, you know, at rest, which is nuts. And if you watch the attack power as I'm actually fighting, you'll see that the attack power actually goes up kind of to insane levels. You can see I'm hitting 61,000 there, and that's with the Grandfather. Like, the Grandfather is adding so much additional, just loveliness to the way that this character works. I can only imagine how many cool builds I could make with this thing. I'm gonna have a lot of fun playing around with it. It's gonna be a pain in the butt though, getting another one of these when the next season starts, because you got to spend a really long time farming Duriel to get your hands on this. And it really does open up a lot of new builds, though, in my opinion. Things that might not necessarily otherwise have been possible before. I was using this on my Frenzy Barbarian for a while. My Frenzy Barbarian is absolutely amazing. But this Barbarian is a whole new Barbarian that I created around bleeds. I wanted to see what it would be like if I just ran just Flay. Basic Flay Barbarian, which is actually done a hell of a lot better than I ever thought it would do. I mean, we're talking about 3 million bleeds per second I can get up to, where it's literally just proccing 3 mil, 3 mil, 3 mil, 3 mil. It's kind of nuts. And I'm not even using any other super uniques in this. I do have a Shaco as well, but I think that the Tusk Helm of Jorts the Mighty is actually better for this specific build. Although I certainly like that 20% damage reduction that this offers. All in all, Grandfather, absolutely amazing. Good luck getting your hands on one, guys. If you find one, let me know. I'd like to see how many of you guys are actually finding Grandfathers. Maybe you could post down in the comments, be like, "Oh yeah, I finally got my Grandfather. Only took me like 700 runs." Anyway, as always, I'd appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, even when we're just talking about the Grandpapa. And as always, keep watching.